Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Calley, CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Operations here at SBAM. Thanks for tuning in today. I'd like to start off today's show by welcoming one of our new members, Thriving Minds Behavioral Health, very fitting for May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and owner Amy Kochba, PhD. So thanks for joining. All right, Brian, we do have a special guest joining us, but we're going to start with kind of a little news story here, and that is about population. Michigan's population has slightly increased over the last couple of years, but we heard last week during the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference that Michigan is experiencing a natural decrease in population. What does that mean?
Yeah, so not to beat around the bush, it means that more people die each year than are born here. So the natural change in the population, natural increase or the natural decrease is as simple as that. How many people died, how many people were born. And so while we have seen a slight increase in the last couple of years in overall population, that is mainly because of immigration and migration, not because of new births. And that has been the case here since 2020. If you look at long-term trends, you'll see that they're with a bit of a reprieve in the second decade of this century, where the decline in the birth rate kind of flattened out and actually increased a little bit. The Especially when the pandemic hit, the numbers flipped and they never flipped back. And in fact, it has generally the pressures on the population are making that gap wider. And so what that means is that we will have challenges in growing the population other than domestic migration or international immigration, given the dynamics. A couple of stats. Michigan's median age or average age is 40.1 years old. And so that puts us the 13th highest in the nation. And we're among the top 15 states for baby boomers as well. So we are those challenges kind of bake in what can happen naturally with your population for quite a long time when you have those types of statistics. So this is going to be a very long-term challenge for Michigan. And it is one of the reasons why domestic migration and international immigration are going to be particularly important for Michigan in the future.
So, Brian, let's talk about the ramifications for workforce and unemployment.
Yeah, this is going to be a challenge because we do see our labor force participation steadily declining. It had fallen really quite a lot during the pandemic, and it took a long time for the state to even get back to its own historic normal. And it eventually kind of inched its way back up, but unfortunately it started to erode again. And what we've seen, it's kind of it's interesting dynamic, is the reason why the unemployment rate is a kind of a deceptive thing to look at in terms of measuring the health of your economy. Because in Michigan, even though we have seen a modest decline in jobs, that has lined up with the reduction in workforce. And the reduction in workforce is mainly because of retirements. And so as we see more people head toward retirement, more people exit the workforce, it's coinciding with the reduction in overall jobs that are available so far, which is why you see a remarkably consistent unemployment rate. But it's staying the same for not that good of reasons. And so this is going to be a long-term, definitely going to be a long-term challenge, and one that it will take literally a generation to turn around.
All right. Well, as we teased out at the top of the show, we do have a special guest joining us today. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it back over to you for that introduction and interview.
All right. Well, I mentioned that the last time that we saw kind of a reprieve in the overall natural population changes, it was during the second decade of the century. I like to call those the good old days. We have here with us Governor Snyder, And Governor Snyder is a lifelong entrepreneur, but also obviously it led our state for 8 years. And so welcome. And but we're here today to talk about SensCy, which is a company that really digs into a pretty important issue when it comes to security around businesses and the multiple threats or the really innumerable threats that come from the digital world. So first, let me say, welcome, Governor Snyder. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, it's great to be with you, Brian, and proud to SBAM member. So excited to be part of this process.
Absolutely. Well, let's just jump in because you've got such a most people know you, of course, because of your history of being governor, but also you're
Oh,
a,
I'm a
a
proud nerd. You know that. Yeah.
yeah, actually, let's just put it there. Let's say a finance guy, a techie, all that kind of stuff, all the nerd
Can't
things.
hold down a job. I mean, what do you do with an old governor? You go do a startup. What the heck?
A start. Well, that is really a pretty awesome development, and it's a startup that we've seen a lot of our member companies utilize too, or find of great use. So let's just talk about SensCy. Um, how can business leaders know how they're doing on cybersecurity in the first place? This is one of those things where it's not always apparent how big your risks are if you haven't been targeted, you haven't had like a near-death experience, you haven't had some sort of a big issue. How does a person who owns a business even know where they stand today?
Good question, Brian. And it's not an easy answer in a lot of ways. And what I tell people, there is a best practice framework out there. Actually, the federal government does a really good job about defining that. It's through the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they have a Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, which when you look at cybersecurity, no one is safe. So the question is, how can you be safer? And it's a layered approach. So it talks about protection and detection, but it also talks about response and recovery and talks about governance. How do you govern all these things to make sure it's running well together? So it's a whole series of things. And to be open with you, it's not written in English. It's written in English in some format, but not for the normal person. So one of the challenges you get if you go to that is translating it to make it in understandable terms for most people. So one thing we actually do at SensCy is we created a SensCy score. We build an algorithm, a formula, taking that to convert it to something everyone understands. And we created the SensCy score, which is like your credit score for your cyber health. It's on a 1,000-point scale. If you're 800 or better, you're in the safer area. If you're less than that, you're in trouble. But it is based on that NIST framework. So I encourage people to use sort of the gold standard to find out where they're at. And the most important thing is don't ignore the question. Quite often people just say, I think I'm okay, or I asked somebody and they said I'm okay. Find out if you're okay or not, because then you can take tangible steps to be safer.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's only a matter of time before there's a real threat that comes your way, and just because the crooks haven't made their way to you yet doesn't mean that you're safe. So let's break this down um, to being very practical. Most of our audience, people that own businesses, tend to be very practical people. What are two or three top things that a small business or small business owner ought to be doing for their own cybersecurity?
Yeah, because there are tangible steps everyone should be taking, and the framework and our scores actually give you a roadmap to do as many of those as you possibly can. But there are certain key ones that stand out if you look at it. And a lot of it, people don't realize that they think it's a techie thing. About 90% of breaches involve a human. So I tell people the most important thing you can do is to have an active cybersecurity culture in your organization, understanding it will not be your top priority until the day you get hacked. Then it will consume your life. But don't ignore it, build on it. And things you can do to help build on it, for example, would be awareness training. Have all your employees we do it every 2 months with our clients and with ourselves, where there's a short video, a short quiz, teaching people more about cybersecurity, the things to look out for and be alert for. Those phishing email, those emails that sound innocent that you click on that are only getting better because of artificial intelligence, but how to be aware of those things. So that's one of the biggest things you can do. Multi-factor authentication, actually setting up so you have two layers of security. It's that thing where people put in their password, but then it says, can we send you a text? Can we send you a code? Or is there a pass key? Or is there an authenticator? There are a lot of different ways to do it, but do something like that. And then have auto updates on. Keep your software up to date. A lot of people don't do that. And it's only going to be more important to stay as up to date as possible. One of the biggest ways people get hacked is they put off doing a patch or an important critical update for 2 or 3 months, and you're just leaving yourself open. Because to go to your comment about smaller organizations, the SBAM members, is sometimes you think, well, they're not going to bother with us because we're small. Where in fact, they like to go after the smaller companies because they're easier to hack. And a lot of times they'll hack smaller organizations because they can use that as a backdoor to get into big companies. So one thing a lot of the members are going to find is their bigger customers are going to start requiring them to do more, to think more about cybersecurity, to stay being a supplier or to stay being a partner with them.
Yeah, it really makes sense. And we do see the level of sophistication on these types of challenges increasing and increasing in a way that is quite, it's alarming how before it was weird characters or capitalization didn't look right. And now capturing the voice of the person that they're spoofing or putting, actually just earlier today had a staff member share with me an email that they got supposedly from me to somebody in our accounting department. And it laid out, I need this invoice paid immediately. And it had a fake email chain below it about receiving an email, reviewing it, asking a question, getting a thing. I'll send this to my accounting department for processing. It was really quite good in how it was, convincing. It wasn't full of mistakes and weird characters or and misspellings and things. It was just something that if there wasn't training ahead of time, that's not how our process works, then it may not have been so obvious to a person that was essentially a crook that was
Yeah,
trying
no, a
to
couple
get
things that
access.
go with that to really look out for, and it's funny. So you'll get that email and you'll say, well, I don't know if I believe this or not. And quite often they'll put a phone number in there or to say if you need to verify it, call this number. And the funny part is people will call that thinking that's a good check, but it was in the email with the bogus information. And to give you an idea how sophisticated these guys are, the bad guys are really bad guys, but they're really smart. So they actually have whole call centers set up. They're in places we can't get them. They actually have employee benefit packages now for hackers. And so literally, you'll call this number and they'll have a call center that will answer with that company name. That's how sophisticated they are. So if you have any question, contact your IT people or just don't do it. I mean, get third-party validation. Don't use that number, but go check with the person. Just go walk and see them or call them separately on a number you know is good. So a lot of that. The other part is sometimes companies or people that own a company are worried that their employees have enough to do. So they don't want to do awareness training because it's sort of one more thing to do. But I tell people that's because you don't think about it the right way. They think it as a burden. And I argue it should be presented as a free employee benefit because it's going to make those employees safer and safer at home. We encourage anything anybody learns in our videos to take it home. And we've actually had cases where clients have said, somebody came to us that's an employee and they said, hey, I didn't get hacked at home because I learned this or I spread it around. And I'm amazed. Sue, Sue, my wife, she's actually come to me and she goes, I think this could be a phishing email. And it's like, wow, we've made progress in technology and understanding.
This is, I mean, it is constant too. And we have to assume that they're just going to get better and better at what they do, the crooks, I mean.
Mhm.
And given that is the reality that we face, staying vigilant is the best defense. Okay, so one of the things that we asked for here at SBAM was for SensCy to put this to take some steps and offer to put this within reach of small businesses. And so I just want to share that with our audience today in what is on the table now for them to think of this SBAM SensCy member benefit.
Yeah, so we have a special offer, a package available, a 1 year subscription that includes getting a SensCy score. So you'll get a true assessment of your cyber health, an objective assessment that is really valuable. I say that's always the best first step. In addition to that, we've got a couple other things to go with that that would happen on a persistent basis, essentially 24/7 over the course of the next year, and that's vulnerability, an external vulnerability scan. And what is that? It's like a drive-by. So we don't need to be in your system, but we would set up a scanning system to continually monitor your business to look for holes to open. Like when I call it a drive-by, it's like driving down a street saying, did you leave your front door unlocked? Did you leave the window open? Can the bad guys just go walking in your place because of this? We essentially do that electronically on your business, and we give you a report as to what we find. So it gives you the ability to see if there's an issue or what you can do about it. And then we'll do dark web scanning. And dark web scanning involves obviously the dark web. The dark web is the scary place where if your stuff's been taken, stolen, captured some way, your most important information, that's where it would be resold to other people. So we actually do dark web scanning to see is your stuff already out there or does something show up to show you got a problem that wasn't even identified, but it gives you something then you can respond to. Actually, I don't know if you recall, we did dark web scanning back at the state all the time in addition to vulnerability scanning. And I was really proud that they would find stuff, but it was stuff out of like some publicly available manual that they were trying to con somebody into buying. We never had critical data show up. But it gave me better peace of mind as governor that we were in good shape when they didn't find stuff like that. And again, we can't scan every corner of the dark web, but we have very sophisticated tools to look on the dark web. So it'd be get a score, get your cyber health, get this external vulnerability scanning and dark web scanning going on all the time over the course of 12 months. And that should help you feel better. And there's more to be done, but that's a great starting point for $999 a year.
Yeah,
I
so
feel like I'm one of those commercials that you'd find on
yes,
cable.
yeah,
For
yeah.
$9.99, you can get this deal.
Yeah, well, and to think about, I mean, that the idea of, we're not talking about one and done. We're talking about essentially an annual subscription here. And that the idea of peace of mind and triaging too, what the biggest vulnerabilities are. It's one of the things that I think is most useful on this is that, as you had mentioned, like nobody's safe, right? Nobody's totally safe from sophisticated hackers. But the more that you do to make yourself less of the easy target, the more they're probably going to move on to somebody else who's a weaker link. And so as you can identify through these scans what your biggest vulnerabilities are, deal with those biggest vulnerabilities. Even if you don't take every single step that you could, you take the main ones to make yourself a less easy target. And at the end of the day, that's going to make a big difference between whether or not somebody is successful or decide to move on to somebody else who hasn't taken the appropriate steps to keep themselves safe.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference in terms of how big a target you are and how big a risk you are. Because the cost of a breach is very large. People don't understand the full consequences. It's everything from financial costs. Are they going to hold you for ransom or otherwise? If your business is shut down, how much does that cost you? Your reputational damage across the board in many respects. And actually, if you do the right practices, including some of the steps we said, it can actually help you. You should have cyber insurance, but it will help you with your insurance premiums in terms of
Yeah,
bringing those costs down and being better off there. So it's a win for all. It's about being proactive instead of reactive.
you bringing up cyber insurance, it's interesting because I was talking to an executive at an insurance company about cyber insurance and how do you know the appropriate amount to get and what's really covered and what's not. And to be intelligent, we want to help our people be intelligent buyers of that type of insurance. And he was telling me about how they have when this idea of your data being held for ransom, that's unfortunately it happens regularly. And so they actually have like a list of good bad guys and bad guys, meaning that some they hold your information as ransom, and then they'll let it go if you pay them, and others, if you pay them, they still don't let it go. And we just to think about this type of a world that we're living in right now, and how connected everything is and how easy it is for just a simple mistake for one person to push things over the edge. Definitely something for people to seriously consider. How safe is your system? And take a look at this offer. I think we put the link in the comments there. It'll be on the Facebook Live as well, in addition to the Zoom audience. And what a big difference this could make. Governor Snyder, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be with you.
All right, thanks. A lot of really great information, very timely, and a great opportunity for all of us to think before we click, I'd say. All right, Brian, we do have a Data Monday report we'll go to next.
All right, I want to share a report that is mainly this is mainly the consumer price index, or the inflation report. And this is going to be I don't know, it's a complicated report to look at because it is let me actually just kind of well, you guys are gonna have to, oh, here we go. I had a toolbar in the way of being able to go to slideshow presentation. Okay. So the headline inflation, you'll see that blue number spike up to 3.8%. Now, unless you're living under a rock, this is not a surprise to you that fuel prices in particular have jumped up quite a bit. And then looking at the orange number at 2.8, that's core inflation. So that takes out food and energy, the commodity-based items. But you'll see that actually went up too. See this little jump here to 2.8%. So you saw headline inflation jump up quite a bit for 1 month. And then the overall core inflation, a smaller jump, but still up. So what this is telling us is that the commodities are more expensive, which everybody knows because you buy gasoline, but it works. It's the longer that it stays high, the longer that the commodities stay high, the more that it filters its way into the cost of everything else. And so that's where this core inflation is something to really keep an eye on. So if we were to we're going to look at month over month increases, and then we're going to look at year over year increases to see where the big increases are. And you'll see that the month over month, the big change, of course, being gasoline and fuel oil. And when we look at the year over year, you'll see these percentages are much bigger, but this is just in the previous month. You see airfare jumping up as well. Remember, airfare is very highly tied to fuel prices as well. So when you see fuel prices go up, you're going to see airfare go up as well. Other types of energy like electricity is higher. And then you'll see these fruits, meats, poultry, fish, and eggs, fruits and vegetables, non-alcoholic beverages, all in the month over month. Remember, these might look like smaller increases, but remember, that's just in 1 month. So this 1.1 non-alcoholic beverages up 1.1% in the last month. If you were to annualize that number, it's huge. And so speaking of huge, let's look at the year over year numbers. Fuel oil and gasoline being the two biggest jumps over the previous year, but also airline or airfare as well. And so that's really what is driving the headline inflation increases much more so than anything else. So you see this coming in at 3.8%, 2.8% on core inflation. The core inflation is the number really to watch. It's not great that it went up, but it's not as concerning, of course, as the headline number looks. Okay, now looking at the month over month trends, this is where you really can see how the headline inflation diverges from the trends that you see with the core inflation. So here's the core inflation on the bottom, month over month. How much was the overall increase? So they're fractions of a percent. But look at this last month, it was up 0.38%. Okay, so that's a lot for a month, but the core inflation is not terribly out of line with where it has been for the last few years. But if you were to look at headline inflation, the last 2 months are quite a bit higher. And again, driven by commodities, especially fuel, but also food. And you'll see that is way out of whack from the last couple of years. And not surprising, but just to point out that this is the risk. The longer this stays high, the more it's going to make these numbers down here higher. All right. Now there's another one that's called the super core, where you take another thing that is, there's commodities move up and down quickly for forces that aren't like regular or normal inflation, much more to do with short-term supply and demand. Also, housing is another one of those factors that when you take housing out of the mix, what does it look like? And you'll see that it's actually, this is what they call the super core. So less commodities and housing. What's happening with all the other just expenses of life? And 3.38% is nowhere near as high, of course, as it was coming out of the pandemic, but still uncomfortably high. And it's not going to bode well for decreases in interest rates. But here's the one. This is the last slide for today. But this is the one that anybody who is running for office, whether they're at the federal or the national level, this is the one that really, if I were in office, I would be concerned about how the general public is going to feel in the future. And this is where you take wage growth minus inflation for what's real wage growth. And it's been positive here for a while. Real wage growth has been higher than inflation. And so when people get a raise, there's a little more buying power than before. But this part here where inflation exceeded wage growth, it didn't matter that wage growth was positive because it all got eaten up by inflation and then some. And if you remember some of the commentary back then, nothing will put people in a fouler mood than when prices are rising faster than their income. And so that has not been the case for a little while. That's what the green means. The green is when income or wages are growing faster than prices. But during this time, prices were going faster than income. So real income was declining. And look at this, those numbers, see how that's dropped down below? So that is something where I tell you, if I was in office or if I was running for office, that would have all of my attention, because that is the thing that even if you have low unemployment, even if you have positive wage growth, even if you have a lot of positive gross domestic product, all these things can be positive. But if people's actual buying power is going down, then their experience in the economy is not positive in spite of all those other indicators. And seeing that go negative immediately or so quickly is something that I think warrants a lot of focus and attention from policymakers. And if they ignore it, it will definitely be at their peril at the ballot box.
All right, well, thanks for today's Data Monday report, Brian, and thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're in the path of the storm, stay safe. It got really dark out there while we were here on the briefing. We will be back here next month. Well, no, we won't. Next Monday is Memorial Day, so we'll see you in 2 weeks at 3 o'clock.
See you next time.